Your legacy is never going to be defined by your title, your salary, or how many people you lead, but it is going to be defined by something much deeper, and too many people overlook it until it's almost too late. Let's talk about how to change that. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Everyday Diplomat. I'm Michael Forras, a retired Marine Sergeant Major, former U.S. diplomat, and somebody who spent the better part of 20 years leading high-performing teams through crisis, conflict, and constant change. From combat zones to corporate boardrooms, one lesson has always held true. Leadership isn't measured by the position that you hold, but by the people who still carry your lessons long after you're gone. That's what we're exploring today, the legacy of leadership, and how the very smallest moments, decisions, and even conversations can shape how you'll be remembered. Because the truth is, your legacy isn't something you build at the end of your career. It's something that you're building right now in the way you listen, the way you lead, and the way that you show up for the people who depend on you the most. By the end of this episode, you're going to see how to create a leadership legacy that doesn't fade when you walk away, one that continues to influence, inspire, and strengthen others long after you're gone. Many people that I've listened to over the years believe that legacy is what happens at the end of your career, the farewell speeches, the plaques, the stories that people tell when you retire. But that's only the summary. The real legacy is written long before that moment ever occurs, in the choices you make when nobody's watching. When I think back over my own career, I can pinpoint the moment that idea became real to me. It wasn't during a ceremony or a promotion. It was during a quiet conversation with a mentor of mine who reminded me that every day I wore two names on my uniform. The family name that I was born into, Forras, and the one that I chose to become a part of, United States Marines. He told me that everything I did reflected on both of them. That single statement changed how I saw leadership. It turned every decision, every interaction into something bigger than myself. Legacy is not about recognition. It's about reflection. It's about how you make people feel, how you influence their standards, and how you carry yourself when nobody is there to applaud it. It's built through habits, tone, and consistency, and it's what remains long after your voice is gone. I've seen leaders chase titles, thinking that authority would create some sort of lasting impression. But rank, position, and salary, they're temporary. The trust that you build, the examples that you set, and the dignity that you bring to work are what endure. If you lead a team, your legacy is being written every single day. It's in how you respond to conflict, how you give back, and how you model integrity when it costs you something to do so. And here's the thing, it's never too early or late to start shaping it with intention. The question isn't if you'll have a legacy. You already have one. The question is, what type is it going to be? Now, before we go deeper, if you're the type of leader who wants to build a legacy that outlives your position, and since you're here, it tells me that you probably are, this channel is for you. Next week, we're going to talk about the value of service, what veterans teach us about leadership, humility, and purpose. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and turn on notifications so you don't miss it, because these next few episodes connect in ways that can completely change how you lead. All right, if you haven't figured out already, legacy doesn't come from position. It comes from transformation, the lessons that change how you lead and who you become because of them. For me, that lesson started the day that I pinned on corporal. I had just returned from my first deployment to Iraq, and like a lot of young Marines who had been in theater, I came home proud and maybe a little bit too sure of myself. I had experienced something that many never would, and that can create a dangerous illusion that you've somehow earned immunity from any form of accountability. At that point in my life, I thought that leadership was about being in charge. I thought that people followed because of rank, but the Marine Corps has a way of humbling you when you start believing your own story. After one poor decision too many, I made a few back then, I found myself standing in front of a senior Marine who didn't yell and he didn't lecture. Instead, he handed me a shovel and he told me to start digging. It wasn't the punishment that stuck with me. It was the lesson that I understood thoroughly after hours of having time to think. It taught me that authority might get you compliance, but it's never going to earn you respect. From that point forward, I started to pay attention to what real leadership looked like. And just quick side note, this isn't a story to condone or endorse that type of punishment that may or may not be considered hazing by today's standards. Times change. I'm not saying it was ever right, but it happened. And the point here is to recognize that a leader of mine recognized a shortcoming in me and then gave me the opportunity to fix it. And it just so happened that due to my stubbornness, some physical consequences were required to jumpstart that journey. So anyways, after this, the first example came through in an incredible Marine, the then Staff Sergeant Ivan Valdez. He was the gentleman who reminded me that every day I wore those two names on my uniform and that everything I did reflected upon both. That single lesson changed everything for me. It turned the uniform into something sacred, a daily reminder that legacy isn't a concept, it's a commitment that I made. Then came Master Sergeant Charles Rudisell. He was a serious man, known for discipline, professionalism, and a gaze that could stop you mid-sentence. But behind all of that stoicism was a standard that elevated everybody around him. He didn't lead with fear, he led through his own example. When I slipped up, he didn't embarrass me in front of others. He simply gave me more responsibility than I thought I could ever handle. And then he expected me to rise to it. That was accountability in its purest form. Then there was Master Sergeant Andy Anderson. During the workday, he was a Marine's Marine, structured, disciplined, and absolutely precise. But when the work was done, he made time for connection. He showed us that leadership didn't end at 1630. He built camaraderie, trust, and psychological safety amongst the team. Andy taught me that how you treat people after the mission ends says as much about you as how you lead when it's underway. Each of these men shaped a piece of my leadership philosophy. From Valdez, I learned that legacy begins with identity. From Rudisell, I learned that accountability builds credibility. From Andy, I learned that humanity strengthens loyalty. Those three lessons became what I now call the three pillars of legacy leadership: identity, accountability, and humanity. They're the foundation of any leader who wants their influence to last longer than their own presence. But the real power of legacy isn't just what you learn from other people, it's what happens when those lessons start to echo back through the people that you've led. That's where we're going next. Okay, so the most powerful thing about legacy is that you don't always get to see it take shape. You plant the seeds, but sometimes it takes years, even decades, before you realize what grew from them. Years after those early lessons, I was stationed in Iwakuni, Japan as a newly promoted gunnery sergeant. My wife and I had 2 kids at the time, and one afternoon we were grilling in the backyard when a moving truck pulled up behind our house. When I saw who stepped out, I completely froze. It was Gunnery Sergeant Ivan Valdez, the very same man who had mentored me years earlier, who had changed the entire direction of my life, was now our neighbor and a peer. I can still remember that moment with absolute clarity. We just stood there for a second, realizing how far both of us had come. He looked incredibly proud, and I felt grateful in a way that's hard to describe right now. Because when you finally stand shoulder to shoulder with the person who you respected the most, the person who once lifted you up, you realize what legacy really means. It's not about being remembered, it's about being replicated. A few years later, I had another one of those moments, the type that makes you stop and take stock of what your career has actually meant. I was serving on my first tour as a first sergeant in San Jose, California, when a young Marine walked into my office and introduced herself. I must not have caught the name because she asked me if I remembered her with the assumption that I did. And I'm sure I said yes, just like everybody before me who had absolutely no idea who someone was, but didn't want to seem rude by saying that they didn't know. So when she then restated that her name was Lance Corporal Dominic Rudisell, my jaw completely dropped. This was the daughter of Master Sergeant Charles Rudisell, my former detachment commander from Moscow, who poured his absolute heart and soul into the development of the Marines under his charge. It hit me all at once. More than a decade earlier, her father had mentored me. He held me accountable, he raised my standards, and he helped me find the balance between authority and humility. And now, here I was mentoring his daughter. It was one of the most humbling and absolutely rewarding experiences of my entire career. That's the ripple effect of mentorship. You see, 10 years earlier, Master Sergeant Rudisell had no idea that the young Marine he was mentoring would one day be the one responsible for his own daughter. No one did, but he treated that job so seriously that absolutely any of us who learned from him would have expertly completed the task. Leadership is never about the moment that you're in right now. It's about the impact that the moment has years down the road. It's about creating those habits and values so strong that they outlive your immediate influence. That's how your name continues to lead even when you're no longer there to say a word. Recognizing all this is exactly why I created the First 30 Days Leadership course, because the truth is your legacy doesn't start when you've been leading for years. It starts the very first day that you step in the role. Those first 30 days set the tone for everything else that follows. They determine whether you earn trust or chase it, whether your team sees consistency or confusion, and whether you start building your legacy with purpose or by accident. And as we've said before, nothing good in leadership ever comes by accident. If you want to learn how to build that type of foundation that lasts, the link is in the description below. It's a course designed to give you the exact habits, mindset, and tactical moves to lead with influence from the very first day. Every decision that you make as a leader leaves a mark. Some fade very quickly, but others last for years. But all of them matter. The words that you choose in frustration, my God, especially the words that you choose in frustration, the way that you correct somebody after a mistake, the tone that you use when you're under pressure. These moments form the memories that people will associate with your leadership. I've seen teams that were broken by small decisions and others that were completely built by them. One leader loses patience and shouts at somebody in front of their peers. It takes months to rebuild the confidence that one moment absolutely destroyed. Another leader stays calm in chaos, listens, and gives clear direction. That steadiness becomes the absolute anchor that carries the entire team forward through the storm. That's how legacies are built. Not in grand speeches or perfect plans, but in the way that you carry yourself when it counts the most. When I think back to my time in uniform, some of the greatest leaders that I ever had the privilege of serving with were the ones who made the hard calls quietly. They earned respect by taking responsibility when things went wrong and then giving credit when things went right. They didn't need to remind anyone of their rank because their actions did it for them. Leadership is about influence, and influence is built on trust. And trust is very fragile. It doesn't vanish overnight, but it can be chipped away by inconsistencies, by ego, or a lack of accountability. That's why integrity matters so much, because your people are watching you, and not just watching what you say, but how you react to everything. Every time you choose integrity over convenience, you reinforce that trust. Every time you own your mistakes instead of deflecting them, you reinforce respect. Every time you pause before reacting, you teach your team how to lead under pressure. These are the quiet, unseen choices that shape your legacy, and the longer you lead, the more those choices begin to accumulate. One day, long after you moved on, somebody is going to quote something that you said, repeat a standard that you set, or make a decision based on the example that you gave them. That's leadership that lasts, and that's the invisible footprint that you leave behind. The real power of leadership is not what happens when you're there. It's what continues to happen when you're gone. The best leaders I have ever known led in a way that their absence still led. Their influence showed up in the standards people kept, the way that they spoke to one another, and in the pride that they carried in their work. That's the quiet power of legacy. It doesn't need recognition or any applause. It's found in the people who still hold the line because you once showed them where it was. But let's be completely clear about something. Building a legacy isn't about vanity. It's not about how many people like you or how good it feels to be remembered. Legacy leadership is about doing the right thing for your people and for your institution, even when it costs you something to do it. It's about setting a standard and living it so consistently that other people want to carry it forward. Sometimes that means making hard calls, holding people accountable, or staying calm when other people begin to panic. Sometimes it's much smaller, the daily act of showing up, of mentoring, of leading with patience and respect. Over days, years, and even decades, those moments add up. And one day, if you've done it right, the young intern or the young Marine or the young employee you once helped orient will be leading the organization that you once served. They'll take it further, faster, and higher than you ever could have imagined. That's what leadership is all about. It's preparing other people to go beyond you. That is your responsibility as a leader, to lay the foundation so strong that other people can build upon it. That's what separates leadership that ends from leadership that actually endures. It's not about being the face of success. It's about being the hands that helped build it. When you lead with that mindset, the measure of your success begins to change. It's no longer about personal achievement. It's about collective progress. It's about knowing that the culture, the people, and the values that you helped shape will continue to thrive long after your chapter closes. If this idea resonates with you, I invite you to join the Diplomat's Dispatch. It's my bi-weekly newsletter where I share lessons just like this. Real stories, practical leadership lessons, and tools I've learned from the field that will help you build a legacy that actually lasts. And if you're ready to take it further, my Foundations course dives much deeper into frameworks that will help you create influence systems and trust that will endure. Because leadership isn't just about results right now, it's about the ripple effects that you leave tomorrow. You know, your legacy isn't a story that people tell when you're gone. It's the story they're already living because of you. Every word, every decision, and every standard you uphold is shaping it right now. Lead with intention, lead in a way that your absence still leads. Thank you so very kindly for joining me today. I'm absolutely honored to have you here and watching this. I'll see you next week when we explore the values of service, honoring veterans in leadership. It's a special episode dedicated to the lessons, humility, and the purpose that veterans bring to the world of leadership. Until then, take care of your people, take care of yourself, and remember, every business is a people business.